Frickin' frack, you be quiet.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Buyer First Ask Me Anything. I am Carole Mahoney. I am the author of the upcoming book, Buyer First, which is coming out September 5th, 2023. So make sure you visit the Unbound Growth website to be first on the list to see all of the happenings there. And this monthly show, well, as you've probably guessed by now, this is all about what are the mindsets, what are the strategies, what are the techniques that we need to adopt as sellers and sales leaders and business leaders in order to become more buyer first. And every month I've been sharing with you snippets from the book and the research behind it and answering all of your questions. And then Jane and I had a conversation. I'm joined today by Jane Gentry. She is an amazing connector and an amazing set of skills, but she's known as a CEO advisor and a business consultant for small to mid-sized firms who are handling everything from strategic growth issues and how do we set those strategies and are we aligned to the organizational issues that they're faced with, to even help them to not just grow, but even exit their companies later on. So Jane, I had introduced, she had reached out to me and said, Carole, I really need to find a CRM technology to help my client. And well, Jane, say hello to everybody and tell us a little bit about what happened. We're not going to name company names. We're not here to bash anyone, but I want you all to hear what Jane's buying experience was because she's going to tell it to you straight. And we're going to talk about some of the things that sellers can do and managers can do to make this better. So Jane, let's go back.
Let's not. Thanks for having me, Carole. I'm thrilled to be here and just happy to help your buyers in any way that I can. So you know that for many years I did sales consulting with very large companies, and so it's not that I don't know CRMs, but that is not a focus of my business at this point, and you are much more connected to that. And so I had kind of initial point of view on some CRMs for this particular client, but there was a kind of a dark horse that I was looking for. And so we ended up with three companies to look at.
Right. And I had referred you to two of them, that one that I knew and, one that I've been working with for a really long time. And then you said the dark horse one.
And so where we ended up was I knew one of the ones that you worked with for a long time. The other one I knew about, but not a lot. And then there was an incumbent. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And so as you started to go through this process, what was your process to narrow it down to those three? Because there's millions of them out there, right? Which is one of the reasons that you reached out, because who has the time to go through everything that's out there?
Yeah. So this company is a $150 million company. They're equity backed at this point. It's three companies that they've been trying to merge together into one offering with maybe three divisions. And the gamut of experience around sales in that organization today is really broad. They go from people that have no sales experience to people that have experience with larger CRMs and other kinds of organizations. And so we wanted to really provide a tool for them that they could use today, that we could show them very quickly how it would help them in the sales process, how it would help them sell more than they, win more than they lose. But we didn't want something that was just overwhelming. And they actually have a CRM, one of the three that we looked at, in their business right now. And it is full of garbage. And it is very difficult to use. One person out of 20 salespeople use it. And so the taste in their mouth right now for CRM was really not like something they're excited about getting.
Yeah, right.
The other thing is this company right now, so they go after very, very large projects for, a company that's only $150 million. But they are usually responding to RFPs. They don't really have an aggressive outbound strategy right now, and they have almost no like inside sales capability at this point. So we are not starting with this customer at the top of the funnel. We're really starting at the beginning of the sales process with an RFP going through to a close. And that made a difference in the experience, not necessarily in the CRM that we're going to use, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so they didn't have, what we would normally see today, which is inbound where leads are coming in, or they wouldn't have salespeople that were calling out. Their current sales process was responding to these large scale RFPs. But I imagine that there were still a lot of moving parts even within that process that they needed to manage.
There are a lot of moving parts. There are engineers, there are a lot of different people that are touching this opportunity as it moves through the pipeline. And we are working to start an outbound sales function for them. So we wanted something where we could put onboarding into the CRM system and have managers see how people are doing in the onboarding system so they know where to coach them.
Yeah, yeah. And so this was the process that you went through. And I can understand now, like, why this was an important part of the process to them, given, the strategy and the things that they have in their business and the way that they're set up. So you had 3 introductions to 3 different companies. Let's talk about the worst first. What was the worst?
They weren't very much distinction, frankly, between them. if I can be really honest with you. And, I'll just start by saying this. You are a sales expert. I come from that background. There are certain organizations where you might have a very low expectation of the sales experience, right? Cable companies or something, right? You're not going into a conversation and you're not expecting to have a really great customer experience. But I'm going to say that when I went into CRM conversations, these are organizations that deal with sales organizations every day. They deal with sales leaders every day. They're an important part of the sales function and sales enablement in organizations. I expected a higher level of customer experience than I would from a lot of other places. And so it's one of the things that made it so disappointing is it felt like, man, you're in the sales ecosystem. What the heck? Why do you not know how to sell? So I'll say the first thing that was fairly consistent was a complete and utter lack of discovery. So as I just said to you, this customer did not start their sales from the top of the funnel. They didn't have anybody today who was calling outbound. They had very specific issues that they were trying to solve around merging these companies together. They don't all have the same sales process, all 3 of the organizations. There's a little bit of nuance in there around these. There are very specific areas where they felt like their current CRM was letting them down. But 2 out of 3 of these companies did not ask 5 questions about what was important to this customer. And I would expect you, if you're in sales enablement, discovery is sales 101. So the fact that there was very little discovery done. Now, I will give a little grace and say this. I know sales. I've worked in sales. I still do some coaching around that. I gave a lot of information up front because there are certain things that I know are going to be important to them.
Yeah.
Having said that, discovery is still really the most important part of the sales process.
Yeah.
You get everything else wrong, right?
Absolutely. And you're right. Like, so from my perspective too, because I referred you to 2 out of these 3 companies. And so when I heard that this was your buying experience, I was like, I look like an idiot as well for referring you, because that is also what I would think is that a company who sells to salespeople CRM software would have an excellent buying experience, and it's not the case, and it's horrifying to me.
And if it were one, I'd be like, oh, this company needs to do some training. And honestly, in my head, the whole time I just kept hearing, please hire me to help you. Please hire me to help you, because this is so bad. Hire somebody if it's not me, right?
Right.
So yeah, that was really disappointing. And it popped up multiple places in the process, right? Because like I said, if you get that wrong, everything after that is wrong. So that was the first thing. The second thing was not a lot of communication. It didn't seem like between the salesperson and the person doing the demo. And I think in one of those, the salesperson actually did the demo, and that was the best one. Two other ones, I think, the salesperson did not do the demo. And, so think of this. I'm in this conversation with the salesperson. They keep moving, the conversation. I keep saying, no, we're not doing that. We're starting at discovery in the sales process. That's where we're starting the sales process. So really don't worry about this other stuff. We get on with a demo. Where do you think they started the demo? It's like I never said a word to these salespeople. The demos it was like canned, right? And they went so fast. I just wanted to say, hey, I'm old. My eyes cannot go as quickly as you are. And it reminds me of years ago, I had somebody working for me, and I do a lot of keynote speaking. And I remember being in the car with her after one, and I'm like, I am so boring. Oh my God, I'm so sick of hearing myself. And she said, you might be sick of hearing yourself, Jane, but for these people, that's the first time they've ever heard this.
Right.
So the coaching I wanted to give these people doing the demo was, you might do this every day. You need to assume it's my first time seeing your technology.
Because it is.
And you need to be engaging the customer. I present. The best presentations engage the customer. You need to engage the customer in the demo. Is this resonating? Are we headed in a direction you care about? Are these the things, that are most important to you? Is there anything that you're not catching or understanding about what we're talking about? Take some breaks, engage the customer, take their temperature. Everybody on the call would have given feedback had they been asked to give feedback.
And that's just the most basic of questions.
That's my point to you, why my frustration level was so high.
Yeah.
I had one salesperson say, I would ask a question. She'd go, good question, Jane. And we can cover that on our next call. And I thought to myself, this is very Southern to say this, but honey, I don't think you're getting a next call, So there a lot of presumption, kind of all around, a lot of assuming. And you know what your mother said about assuming, right?
Right.
So a whole lot of assuming going on.
Right.
And so that really was the experience pretty consistently. And then when we narrowed down to two and got to the implementers who don't work for these organizations, right? One implementer was an absolute rock star. He sold that deal. The company that we chose needs to give him some commission because
I know that they do.
He clearly knows sales. He clearly can articulate to a customer why CRM is valuable, what the process is, give them a comfort level around the integration, very comfortable with what it's going to take to accomplish an integration using that technology.
Mm-hmm.
The other company, again, the man did not know our business. He didn't know the first thing about sales. He didn't seem like he had a conversation at all with
Mm-hmm.
the salesperson, and he wanted to do it on an open-ended hourly rate. I
Hmm.
don't build my house like that, and I'm not going to build a CRM like that.
Yeah, here's a blank check. Fill in
You
the
know,
number you think is right.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so that person did the company that he's working for no
Mm-hmm.
favors at all in that process. Because even if the CRM company had been a little bit more in the running, and initially what had them in the running, frankly, was the price. We had to do a lot of work with the CEO to convince him that this one that we chose was a better solution for them now and in the long term, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know as well as I do, buyers have to be in a lot of pain to move off of the current solution that they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to walk around with a limp and you just get used to it, right? And that's the same with technology or anything else. It's not the best solution for me, but I've gotten accustomed to the limp and I feel like the surgery is going to be really painful.
Right.
So you have to have a really compelling solution for a
Mm-hmm.
customer to move off their current, away from their current provider.
Right.
So they actually were in the running until we got on the phone with the implementer.
Right.
Now we still had to go back to the CEO and make an argument,
Mm-hmm.
a business argument for why we wanted to use this provider.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we got him to a place where he was sold on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
But he had some other things on his plate.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I'll tell you is the person that we actually chose, her and the implementer, both were like doing the used car salesman squeeze on me. And unlike a lot of buyers, I'm not, people think buyers are liars. I'm pretty straightforward with you about the situation that you're in and what's going on. And I said, yep, this is a done deal. We've got to get it across the desk of the CEO. He
Mm-hmm.
wants some time to think about it. He's in the middle of closing their biggest deal of the year, and it's got to get closed.
Mm-hmm.
So you coming back to me 15 times and saying the special price that we're giving you, Jane, is going to expire does nothing but get on my very last nerve because I can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
And I get 100 emails a day in my inbox. So that one just does nothing but tick me off. And I said what I think probably most customers would say, which is, well, do what you have to do. And if we have to make a different decision because of that, then we will.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it sounds like the beneficial part was when the one provider who had a good implementation person who could explain not just the process but the impact of that process, made the implementation less scary. That's what essentially was what won the deal for them. But then to then resort back to, like you said, the old sales tactics. If you sign by the 30th, we can offer you a 15% discount, but that's going to expire after that date.
I will tell you, Carole, that one of the senior leaders on the client team wrote immediately to both of those people when they got the signature and said, I want to give you feedback about this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that you looked like a rock star until the end, and then you almost ruined the relationship. So that experience needs to be positive the whole way through the cycle, right? And I get it. You're trying to get your number in for the end of the month or the end of the quarter, but it's not my problem, right? That's your problem. I can't go any faster to make your sales numbers better, frankly.
Right.
So, so even the customer, my customer, gave feedback to them on the experience. Unfortunately, not the two that lost. And the
But
other
they're
thing is,
paying attention now.
neither of them came back to say, why did we not win? Why did we not, what happened? They just kind of disappeared. And I think great salespeople ask to be measured and ask for feedback. And maybe some buyers won't give you that feedback, but I will.
Yeah. Which is why we're doing this, because this is like I don't know, this is like you're about to crash onto the shore, and this is the lighthouse telling you that you're about to crash onto the shore, people. It's beyond frustrating for me, but it is also, I have hope, right? Like I have hope, and I know that you have hope. At least I hope that you have hope. We've given some, advice to sellers about what it is that they should do. But at
Yeah,
the
I hate to be Debbie Downer.
right,
You're
and we've
catching me
given
right
them
at
that.
the tail end of a
Exactly,
really
right?
bad experience. But
And the frustrating and sad part of this is that everyone is wondering now at the end of the year, why aren't we hitting our numbers? We're telling it to you straight from the buyer's experience here. Like that is the whole point of this episode, is that you can hear it straight from the buyer as to what you did and how it made them feel. And I can point to the studies and I can point to the research, but it hasn't changed all that much based on this very recent experience. So for sellers, what I've heard from Jane, what you need to do now is do a better discovery. Ask questions that are not just about you. Listen to them, repeat back what you heard, and deal with objections not as obstacles to ignore or overcome or dangle the carrot. Oh, we'll deal with that later, because they're not going to opt in for those conversations. And don't use the old school pressure tactics of discounting and deadlines, because it's not based in value. It's based on, again, what you want. But here's the other part of all of this is a lot of these behaviors happen because of the pressure that managers are putting on them, happens because of the lack of coaching that managers are doing. So if you were to talk to the managers of these salespeople, right? Like we can't really blame the children for behaving badly when we have given them the cookies and the cake and then, let them run free through the neighborhood. What would you say to managers as to what they need to do to start changing these behaviors? For the love of sales, please. What do we need to get them to
so
do?
I can tell you in two or three, maybe in all three of the experiences,
Mhm.
the person that was selling the technology to me was a former customer of that technology.
Mhm.
So you would think that that's a good thing.
Right.
But what it felt like is the managers took a shortcut and didn't train these people how to sell. Because you are a good customer and you understand the technology,
Mhm.
that doesn't make you a good salesperson.
Mm.
And I have said to sales managers for years, when they're hiring salespeople, you're looking for a person with great competency, not necessarily a person who understands your industry. And
Mm.
you know as well as I do that sales leaders push back on this. And I have said to my customers, I bet you I could go to a sales meeting and do enough discovery to come back and get you an opportunity.
Mhm.
It's not understanding the product or the market. It is understanding the customer and what they're trying to solve.
Yes.
So I would say to these sales managers, training is critical. And another thing that I tell them all the time is learning and development are not the same thing. That's why that department is called learning and development. So
Mhm.
a lot of managers knee jerk to sales training, and that's fantastic. It's a half of the equation. That's like me watching a YouTube video or reading a book about how to fix my golf swing. It's going to give me the intellectual understanding, but
Mhm.
and by the way, people forget within 10 days 70% of what they learned.
Yep.
Okay, so that development piece is really where the rubber meets the road and where that learning sticks. And what that looks like is call recordings, call coaching. Would
Yeah.
it be very easy for a manager to pick out the areas of the call coaching where their salespeople really miss the mark and to do some effective coaching with them. I
Mhm.
wish I think I have a YouTube video on this. I wish they weren't called sales managers, because it really leads people to misunderstand the job
Exactly.
description of that role. It is
Mhm.
not your job to manage numbers. It is your job to coach salespeople, coach to the process. Without the coaching, you don't get to the numbers.
Nope.
You
Nope.
can't course correct numbers. You can course correct behavior, right?
Yes.
So coaching is the other thing. And what are the connections with everybody involved in the sales process?
Mhm.
So these demo people just seemed like, hey, Joe, I need you to do a demo at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. And Joe gets in and hits go. No
Mhm.
understanding of the customer, no understanding of what they're doing with the technology. So what is that whole, are you managing that whole experience? And years ago, or before COVID, I had some clients ask me to secret shop them at their big trade shows.
Mhm. I've done that.
Um, and one of the things that I would secret shop is the demo. Did you do discovery? Did you start the demo where I asked you to? Or did you just start at the beginning of the demo, right?
Mhm.
The salespeople that said, okay, Jane, these are the 4 things you said were important to me. I'm gonna, we have this in here, but I'm gonna go past this, if that's okay for you, to hit what's more important to you
Yeah.
and hit my 4 things. That engages me much more than you starting at the beginning of your demo.
Yeah. Like the conversation you described where you had asked a direct question and the salesperson's response was, "That's a great question. We'll answer it later. Here's the carrot that I'm trying to dangle in front of you because I don't really care what you want or think right now. I've got to go through these steps."
And Carole, this happens so, it just seems so basic.
I know it seems very basic to
It
us. It
happens
does.
all the time. I was
Mhm.
hired by a client to help them craft an RFP for an industry that I happen to know very well.
Mhm.
And so I sat through a half a dozen presentations that they let other organizations, they let these companies come in and do. And the client said, you have an hour and a half to present whatever you want or ask any questions of us.
Mhm.
Now, the fact that the client said, ask any questions of us second in their sentence is not, does not mean you should ask questions second, right? So what happened is the vast majority of these presenters walked through their whole capabilities deck with about 10 minutes
At the
to
end.
ask questions of 8 buyers in the room.
Mhm.
Is it
Mhm.
possible that you hit on things that are important to them? Sure. Is it likely? I would argue no.
Mm-mm.
Um, a couple of them, the client said, oh, I'm just pointing out to you that we only have 10 more minutes before we have to wrap up. So the differentiation of the companies, the couple, measly amount of companies that started with validating what they thought they heard in discovery, asking if they got that right, asking if there's anything they left out, and
Mhm.
and navigating their presentation to address those things,
Yeah.
they looked miles better, not incrementally better than everybody else. There was such a differentiator that it was easy to get rid of these other companies.
Yeah.
It's a shame how often I see that,
And
really.
and I am sure you're not the only one that has seen that. And that is, and we have these things on LinkedIn where people are complaining about the spams that they're getting. I actually had to just block someone a few minutes ago because they've been spamming me on every social network about how they can increase my YouTube channel followers. And I'm like, no. And so it's unfortunately becoming more prevalent, which is why I think that this is going to be the focus of our buyer first interviews of, going forward, because obviously we're not making enough noise about this for a sales technology organization to be able to understand and grasp. Like,
Well, here's
easy
the thing,
example.
too. To your point about your YouTube
Yeah.
spammer, It is so hard to get in front of a potential customer.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you better have your toolkit ready and your
Mm-hmm.
tools sharpened when
Mm-hmm.
you actually have the opportunity to be in front of a customer. It is getting harder and harder to get in front of somebody.
Yeah,
So,
get it
man,
right.
don't waste that opportunity. And if sales leaders have not recorded or sat in on calls with their salespeople recently, I'm begging you,
Please do it.
your numbers will go up exponentially.
And I'll end with this, because I know that I don't want to keep you too much longer, but when we talk about call recordings and when we talk about sitting in, those are absolutely part of the equation. But if you really want to get ahead of this, sales managers and sales leaders, then you need to be proactively coaching on a regular basis with your salespeople, not after the conversation happens, but before the conversation happens. Practice, role play, strategize. What are the questions? When is it appropriate to ask these questions? Test them on their ability to handle objections, because that's when you start to develop the habits and the behaviors that
Yep.
make these conversations go right in the first place, or at least better than what we're seeing today in 2022. Going into a recession, like you said, we need to up our game, and not just because it's a recession, but or down economic time or inflation, whatever you want to call it, but because this is the way that buyers demand to be treated, and they are opting out of sales processes left and right because it is all about us and not all about them.
I'd be interested to know if two of the three have a sales process that they follow, and if
Mm.
they had a go, no go.
Oh, I know that one of them does.
I know one does, the one we
Well,
purchased.
and the one that you didn't choose as well. So, but
Oh,
yes, that's another story.
are you coaching to your own process?
Exactly. So, everyone, tune in. We are going to have one more buying experience, buyer first episode coming in December. So, if you've had a great experience and you want to share what went well and why, or if you've had a horrible experience, and I'm hoping it's not going to all be those, message me, reach out, because I want to talk to you about your experience and what we can learn as salespeople and sales leaders to change the way that we sell to align with the way that people buy today. Jane Gentry, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Hopefully, we have some people that actually start to take heart.
And hopefully it wasn't such a downer. I hope they got something positive out of it.
I hope that if nothing else, for change to happen, you have to be aware of the fact that there's a problem. And the fact that the problem still exists means that we haven't raised enough awareness about this. And again, if it's sales companies, technology companies that are still doing these things, we are perpetuating a problem that needs to stop. All right. Thank
Agreed.
you all. Thank you, Jane. Until
Bye-bye.
next time, we'll see you in December, everyone.